All right, here we go. Another essay, another day. We're reading Friendship by Ralph Waldo Emerson. At first, I'm just going to read a quote by Thoreau that I wrote in the front here. I almost misattributed it to Emerson, so here we go. True friendship can afford true knowledge. It does not depend on darkness or ignorance. Thoreau. I mean, I was misattributing to Emerson in my head, probably because they from the same time period and they were friends. So funny. But again, I'm going to be. It starts out fairly slow here, so I'm going to be skipping ahead and just reading the parts I underline, and then the second half I'll be reading the whole way through. The essay in total is only about 12 pages, but it's quite boring at the beginning, in my opinion. So when I say skip, I'm just skipping to the next part that I underlined. High thanks I owe to you, excellent lovers, who carry out the world for me to new and noble depths, and enlarge the meaning of all my thoughts. Skip. I must feel pride in my friend's accomplishments as if they were mine, and a property in his virtues. I feel as warmly when he is praised, as a lover when he hears applause of his engaged maiden. We overestimate the consciousness of our friend. His goodness seems better than our goodness, his nature finer, his temptations less. Everything that he has, that is his name, his form, his dress, books, and instruments, fancy enhances. Our own thought sounds new. Our own thought sounds new and larger from his mouth. That wouldn't fly in today's grammar, but skip. Friendship, like the immortality of the soul, is too good to be believed. Yeah, I think it's interesting here. We're really getting to the nature of friendship as Thoreau and Emerson, or Emerson really sees it. Getting to this part here, and then he's going to write a short little paragraph letter to his quote friend. Thus, every man passes his life in the search after friendship, and if he should record his true sentiment, he might write a letter like this to each new candidate for his love. Dear friend, if I was sure of thee, sure of thy capacity, sure to match my mood with thine, I should never think again of trifles in relation to thy comings and goings. I am not very wise. My moods are quite attainable, and I respect thy genius. It is to me as yet unfathomed, yet dare I not presume in thee a perfect intelligence of me, and so thou art to me a delicious torment, thine ever or never. Skip. What a perpetual disappointment is actual society, even of the virtuous and gifted. Ain't that the truth? Okay, skip again. I do not wish to treat friendship daintily, but with the roughest courage. When they are real, they are not glass threads or frostwork, but the solidest thing we know. For now, after so many ages of experience, what do we know of nature and of ourselves? Not one step has man taken towards the solution of the problem of his destiny. In one condemnation of folly stand the whole universe of man, but the sweet sincerity of joy and peace which I draw from this alliance with my brother's soul, it is the nut itself, whereof all nature and all thought is but the husk and shell. Happy is the house that shelters a friend. It might well be built, like a festal bower or arch, to entertain him a single day, happier if we know the solemnity of that relation and honor its awe. He who offers himself a candidate for that covenant comes up like an Olympian to the great games, where the firstborn of the world are the competitors. He proposes himself for the contest where time, want, and danger are in the lists, and he is alone the victor who has truth enough in his constitution to preserve the delicacy of his beauty from the wear and tear of all these. The gifts of fortune may be present or absent, but all the speed in that contest depend on intrinsic nobleness and the contempt of trifles. There are two elements that go to the composition of friendship, each so sovereign that I can detect no superiority in either. No reason why either should be named first. One is truth. A friend is a person with whom I can be sincere. Before him I may think aloud. I am arrived at last in the presence of a man so real and equal that I may drop even those undermost garments of dissimulation, courtesy, and second thought, which men never put off, and may deal with him in the simplicity and wholeness with which one chemical atom meets another. Sincerity is the luxury allowed, like diadems and authority, only to the highest rank. That, being permitted to speak truth, as having none above it, is to court or conform unto. Every man alone is sincere. At the entrance of a second person, hypocrisy begins. We parry and fend the approach of our fellow man by compliments, by gossip, by amusements, by affairs. We cover up our thought from him under 100 folds. I knew a man who, under a certain religious frenzy, cast off this drapery, and omitting all compliment and commonplace, spoke to the conscience of every person he encountered, and that with great insight and beauty. At first he was resisted, and all men agreed he was mad, but persisting, as indeed he could not help doing, for some time in this course, he attained to the advantage of bringing every man to his acquaintance into true relations with him. No man would think of speaking falsely with him, or of putting him off with any chat of markets or reading rooms. But every man was constrained by so much sincerity to the like plain dealing, and what love of nature, what poetry, what symbol of truth he had, he didn't certainly show him. But to most of us, society shows not its face and eye, but its side and back. To stand in true relations with men is in a false age is worth the fit of insanity, is it not? We can seldom go erect. Almost every man we meet requires some civility, requires to be humored. He has some fame, some talent, some whim of religion or philanthropy in his head, but is not to be questioned, and which spoils all conversation with him. But a friend is the sane man who exercises not my ingenuity, but me. My friend gives me entertainment without requiring any stipulation on my part. A friend, therefore, is a sort of paradox in nature. I who alone am, I who see nothing in nature whose existence I can affirm with equal evidence to my own. Behold now the semblance of my being in all its height, variety, and curiosity, reiterated in a foreign form, so that a friend will be reckoned the masterpiece of nature. The other element of friendship is tenderness. We are beholden to men by every sort of tie, by blood, by pride, by fear, by hope, by lucre, by lust, by hate, by admiration, by every circumstance and badge and trifle. But we can scarce believe that so much character can subsist in another as to draw us by love. Can another be so blessed and we so pure that we can offer him tenderness? When a man becomes dear to me, I have touched the goal of fortune. I find very little written directly to the heart of this matter in books, and yet I have one text which I cannot choose but remember. My author says, I offer myself faintly and bluntly to those whose I effectually am, and tender myself least to him to whom I have to... I'm going to read that again. My author says, I offer myself faintly and bluntly to those whose I effectually am, and tender myself least to him to whom I am the most devout. I wish that friendship should have feet, as well as eyes and eloquence. It must plant itself on the ground before it vaults over the moon. I wish to be a little of a citizen before it is quite a cherub. We cheld the citizen because he makes love a commodity. It is an exchange of gifts, of useful bands. It is good neighborhood. It watches with the stick. It holds the pail at the funeral. It quite loses sight of the delicacies and nobility of the relation. But though we cannot find the god under the disguise of the sutler, yet on the other hand, we cannot forgive the poet if he spins his thread too fine, and does not substantiate his romance by the municipal virtues of justice, punctuality, fidelity, and pity. I hate the prostitution of the name of friendship to signify moldish and worldly alliances. I much prefer the company of plowboys and tin peddlers to the sulken and perfumed amenity which celebrates its days of encounter by a feverish display, by rides in a circum and dinners by the best taverns. The end of friendship is a commerce, the most strict and homely that can be joined, more strict than any of those which we have experienced. It is for aid and comfort through all these relations and passages of life and death. It is fit for serene days and graceful gifts and country rambles, but also for rough roads and hard fare, shipwreck, poverty, and persecution. It keeps company with the sallies of the wit and trances of religion. We are to dignify to each other the daily needs and offices of man's life, and embellish by courage, wisdom, and unity. It should never fall into something unusual and settled, but should be alert and attentive, and add rhyme and reason to what was drudgery. Friendship may be said to require natures so rare and costly, each so well tempered and so happily adapted, and withal so circumstanted, that its satisfaction can very seldom be assured. It cannot subsist in its perfection. Some say of those who are learned in this warm lore of the heart, betwixt more than two. I am not quite so strict in my terms, perhaps because I have never known so high a fellowship as others. I please my imagination more with a circle of godlike men and women vicariously related to each other, and between whom subsists a lofty intelligence. But I find this law of 1-to-1 peremptory for conversation, which is the practice and consummation of friendship. Do not mix waters too much. The best mix as ill as good as bad, as good and bad. You shall have very useful and cheering discourse at several times with two several men, but let all three of you come together, and you shall not have one new and hearty word. Two may talk and one may hear, but three cannot take part in conversation of the most sincere and searching sort. In good company there is never such discourse between two, across the table, as takes place when you leave them alone. In good company the individuals merge their egotism into a social soul exactly coextensive with the several consciousness there present. No partialities of friend to friend, no fondness of brother to sister, of wife to husband, are there pertinent, but quite otherwise. Only he may then speak who can sail on the common thought of the party, and not poorly limited of his own. Now this conversation, which good sense demands, destroys the high freedom of great conversation, which requires an absolute running of two souls into one. No two men, but being left alone with each other, enter into simpler relations. Yet it is the affinity that determines which two shall converse. Unrelated men give little joy to each other, will never suspect the latent powers of each. We talk sometimes of great talent for conversation, as if it were a permanent property in some individuals. Conversation is an evanescent relation, no more. Evanescent, Evanescent. A man is reputed to have thought and eloquence. He cannot, for all that, say a word to his cousin or his uncle. They accuse his silence with as much reason as they would blame the insignificance of a dial in the shade. In the sun it will mark the hour. Among those who enjoy his thought, he will regain his tongue. Friendship requires that rare men betwixt likeness and unlikeness, that piques each with the presence of power and of consent in the other party. Let me alone be the end of the world, rather than that my friend should overstep, by a word or look, his real sympathy. I am equally balked by antagonism and by compliance. Let him not cease an instant to be himself. The only joy I have in his being mine is that the not mine is mine. I hate, where I looked for a manly furtherance, or at least a manly resistance, to find as much of concession. Better be a nettle in the side of your friend than his echo. A nettle being, I had to look this up because better be a nettle in the side of your friend than an echo, which a nettle is a plant with jaded leaves and stinging hairs. So a thorn in your friend's side than his echo. The condition which high friendship demands is ability to do without it. The high office requires great and sublime parts. There must be very two before there can be very one. Let it be an alliance of two large, formidable natures, mutually beheld, mutually feared, before yet they recognize the deep identity which beneath these disparities unite them. He only is fit for this society who is magnanimous, who is sure that greatness and goodness are always economy, who is not swift to intermeddle with his fortunes. Let him not intermeddle with this. Leave to the diamond its ages to grow, nor expect to accelerate the births of the eternal. Friendship demands a religious treatment. We talk of choosing friends, but friends are self-elected. Reverence is a great part of it. Treat your friend as a spectacle. Of course, he has merits that are not yours, and that you cannot honor. If you must needs, hold him close to your person. Stand aside, give those merits room, let them mound and expand. Are you the friend of your friend's buttons or of his thoughts? To a great heart he will still be stronger. He will still be a stranger in 1,000 particulars, that he may come near in the holiest ground. Leave it to the girls and boys to regard a friend as property, and to suck at a short and all-confounding pleasure instead of the noblest benefit. Let us by our entrance to this guild by a long probation. Why should we desecrate noble and beautiful souls by intruding on them? Why insist on rash personal relations with your friend? Why go to his house or know his mother and brother and sisters? Why be visited by him at your own? Are these things not things material to our covenant? Leave this touching and clawing. Let him be to me a spirit, a message, a thought, a sincerity, a glance from him. I want but not news, nor pottage. I can get politics and chat and neighborly conveniences from cheaper companions. Should not the society of my friend be to me poetic, pure, universal, and great as nature itself? Ought I to feel that our tie is profane in comparison with yonder bar of cloud that sleeps on the horizon, or that clump of waving grass that divides the brook? Let us not vilify, but raise it to that standard. That great defying eye, that scornful beauty of his mien and action, do not pique yourself on reducing, but rather fortify and enhance. Worship his superiorities. Wish him not less by a thought, but hoard and tell them all. Guard him by thy counterpart. Let him be to thee forever a sort of beautiful enemy, untamable, devotedly revered, and not a trivial conveniency to be soon outgrown and cast aside. The hues of the opal, the light of the diamond are not to be seen if the eye is too near. To my friend I write a letter, and from him I receive a letter. That seems to you a little. It suffices me. It is a spiritual gift worthy of him to give, and of me to receive. It profanes nobody. In these warm lines of the heart will trust itself, as it will not to the tongue, and pour out the prophecy of a godlier existence than all the annals of heroism have yet made good. Respect so far the holy laws of this friendship as to not prejudice its perfect flower by your impatience for its opening. We must be our own before we can be another's. There is at least this satisfaction in crime, according to the Latin proverb. You can speak to your accomplice on even terms. Then he quotes the Latin proverb. Those whom crime pollutes, it makes equal. Those whom crime pollutes, it makes equal. I have no idea what that means. Okay. To those whom we admire and love, at first we cannot. Yet the least defect of self-possession validates vitiates. I've never even seen that word before. Vitiates, in my judgment, the entire relation. There can never be deep peace between two spirits, never mutual respect until, in their dialogue, each stands for the whole world. What is so great as friendship? Let us carry with what grandeur of spirit we can. Let us be silent, so we may hear the whisper of the gods. Let us not interfere. Who set you to cast about what you should say to the select souls, or how to say anything so such? No matter how ingenious, no matter how graceful and bland, there are innumerable degrees of folly and wisdom, and for you to say aught is to be frivolous. Wait, and they shall heart shall speak, and thy heart. And for you to aught is to be frivolous. Wait, and thy heart shall speak. Wait until the necessary and everlasting overpowers you, until day and night avail themselves of your lips. The only reward of virtue is virtue, and the only way to have a friend is to be one. You shall not come nearer a man by getting into his house. If unlike his soul only flees the faster from you, you shall never catch a true glance of his eyes. We see the noble afar off, and they repel us. Why should we intrude? late, very late, we perceive that no arrangements, no introductions, no consuls, or habits of society would be of any avail to establish us in such relations with them as we desire, but solely the uprise of nature in us to the same degree it is in them. Then shall we meet as water with water. And if we should not meet them then, we shall not want them, for we are already they. In the last analysis, love is only the reflection of a man's own worthiness from another man. Men have sometimes exchanged names with their friends as if they would signify that in their friend each loved his own soul. The higher the style we demand of friendship, of course the less easy to establish it with flesh and blood. We walk alone in the world. Friends such as we desire are dreams and fables, but a sublime hope cheers ever for the faithful heart that elsewhere, in other regions of the universal power, souls are now acting, enduring, and daring, which can love us, and which we can love. We may congratulate ourselves that the period of nonage, of follies, of blunders, and of shame is past in solitude, and when we are finished men, we shall grasp heroic hands in heroic hands, only to be admonished by what you already see, not to strike leagues of friendship with cheap persons where no friendship can be. Our impatience betrays us into rash and foolish alliances which no God attends. By persisting in your path, though you forfeit the little, you gain the great. You demonstrate yourself so as to put yourself out of reach of the false relations, and you draw to you the firstborn of the world, those rare pilgrims whereof only one or two wander in nature at once, and before whom the vulgar great show as spectres and shadows merely. It is foolish to be afraid of making our ties too spiritual, as if we could lose any genuine love. Wherever correction of our popular views we make from insight, nature will be sure to bear us out in, and through it seem to rob us of some joy, will repay us with a greater. Let us feel, if we will, the absolute insulation of man. We are sure that we have all in us. We go to Europe, we pursue persons, or we read books in the insect of faith that these will call it out and reveal us to ourselves. Beggars all. The persons are such as we. The Europe, an old faded garment of dead persons. The books their ghosts. Let us drop this idolatry. Let us give over this mendicancy. Let us even bid our dearest friends farewell and defy them, saying, "Who are you? Unhand me. I will be dependent no more. Aye, seek thou not, O brother, that thus we part only to meet again on a higher platform, and only be more each other's." Stand by. What are you? Unhand me. I will be dependent no more. Aye, seest thou not, O brother, that thus we part only to meet again on a higher platform, and only be more each other's, because we are more our own. A friend is Janus-faced. He looks to the past and the future. He is a child of all my foreign hours, of all my foregoing hours, the prophet of those to come, and the harbinger of a great friend. I do then with my friends as I do with my books. I would have them where I can find them, but I seldom use them. We must have society on our own terms, and admit or exclude it on the slightest cause. I cannot afford to speak much with my friend. If he is great, he makes me so great that I cannot descend to converse. In the great days, presentiments hover before me in the firmament. I ought then to dedicate myself to them. I go in that I may seize them. I go out that I may seize them. I fear only that I may lose them, receding into the sky in which now they are only a patch. And last page of the essay. A brighter light. Then, though I prize my friends, I cannot afford to talk with them and study their visions, lest I lose my own. I would indeed give me a certain household joy to quit this lofty seeking, this spiritual astronomy or search of stars, and come down to the warm sympathies with you. But then I know well I shall mourn always the vanishing of my mighty gods. It is true, next week I shall have languid moods, when I can well afford to occupy myself with foreign objects. Then I shall regret the lost literature of your mind, and wish you were by my side again. But if you come, perhaps you will fill my mind only with new visions, not with yourself, but with your lustres, and I shall not be able any more than now to converse with you. So I will owe to my friends this extravagant intercourse. I will receive from them not what they have, but what they are. They shall give me that which properly they cannot give, but which emanates from them. But they shall not hold me by any relations less subtle and pure. We will meet as though we met not, and part as though we parted not. It seemed to me lately more possible than I know to carry a friendship greatly on one side, without due correspondence on the other. Why should I cumber myself with regrets that the receiver is not capacious? It never troubles the sun that some of its rays fall wide and vain into ungrateful space, and only a part on the reflecting planet. Let your greatness educate the crude and cold companion. If he is unequal, he will presently pass away, but thou art enlarged by thy own shining, and no longer a mate for frogs and worms, doth sour and burn with the gods of thy Emprian. It is thought a disgrace to love unrequited, but the great will see that the true love cannot be unrequited. True love transcends the unworthy objects, and dwells and broods on the eternal. And when the poor interposed mass crumbles, it is not sad, but feels rid of so much earth, and feels its independency the surer. Yet these things may hardly be said without a sort of treachery to the relation. The essence of friendship is entireness, a total magnanimity and trust. It must not surmise or provide for infirmity. It treats its objects as a god, and it may defy. It treats its objects as a It treats its object as a god, and it may deify both. There you go. That is the end of friendship. Why should I cumber myself with regrets that the receiver is not compared? It never troubles the sun that some of its rays fall wide and vain into ungrateful space, and only a small part on the reflecting planet. I like that. The idea that your love is supposed to be like the sun, where only a small part would ever shine on a useful part of the universe where people or living things actually need it, but radiates out, but majority of its light radiates out into the universe just to illuminate it, or to, that's kind of a beautiful metaphor. I'm going to add a few things here since we're quite good on time here. It's interesting that he talks like so much about letter writing and being kept with your friend through the means of letter correspondence, because it's something that Danielle and I did quite emphatically when we were dating. Because in 2013 I was in Comox, but I got transferred to North Bay, Ontario, so from BC to Ontario. And if you're not from Canada, that's a really far ways away, like a couple thousand kilometers. And so one of the ways we stayed connected was through letter writing. And so we would write letters back and forth for our serious conversations. We would have email correspondence for fun correspondence, like sending each other songs. And we did Turn Up the Tune Tuesdays, where we would send her a new song every week, back and forth to each other. So every other week I was on the hook to send her a song. And then we would also send academic articles through email. And then we had phone calls probably 3 or 4 times a week that would last anywhere from like 2 to 6 hours a piece. A lot of communication when we were long distance. And we would also text as well about like our day-to-day happenings. And Goodness gracious, I've forgotten how much we communicated with each other. But those letters were just like probably the best way we could communicate about deeper subjects, because it was just it lends itself so well to the idea of talking about things that you need time to process in order to be able to really be able to articulate well. And I really found that to be super helpful when we were talking about in-depth things. We still have all of our letters in a bin upstairs inside the closet, but gosh, those letter writing brings me back to the old days back in yeah, because I left in spring 2013, and we were I guess just dating long distance for 8 months, and then she came out to visit in December 2013 no, that was when we were just getting to know each other, and then we started dating, and then she moved out August 2014. So there quite a long ways of long period of time of us just getting to know each other via long distance. But yeah, I really I haven't reread those letters in ages either, but yeah, we really enjoyed that time of just getting to know each other that way. But I guess I'll make this offer if I mean, if you have any critiques or suggestions on how this show can improve, or a podcast can improve, by all means send them my way, put them in the comments below. But also, if you'd like to engage in letter writing to discuss some of these themes more in depth, I'll put my address in the link below or in the description below, and you're more than welcome to send me a letter, and I'll definitely write back. I thoroughly enjoy talking about these things and can do so at great length anytime. So by all means, if you want to question my beliefs and challenge me, or if you would just like to understand things better, send me a letter. That's usually that's a good way to fully discuss deep topics that that are difficult to discuss in person if you can't quite find the words in the moment. So by all means, send me a letter. And if it gets too daunting because there's too much, or if I'm just getting overwhelmed, perhaps I'll remove my address from the description. But yeah, we'll just kind of see what happens and go from there. So have a great day.